Hi guys, Neil Tappin here from Golf Monthly, and in this video we are looking at some of the best drivers on the market in 2018, and I've selected my six favourite currently on the market. So there is TaylorMade's M3, Cobra's King F8 Plus, Srixon's Z785, Ping's G400 Max, Callaway's Rogue Sub Zero and Titleist TS3. And what we wanted to do was put them up against each other in a series of head-to-head challenges to see where their strengths and weaknesses lie. Now, if you are in the market for a new driver in 2018, you'll know that there are a host of different brands to choose from and then also a host of different models. And you'll also probably know that you'll need to get a good and thorough custom fitting. But the question is, which models should you go out and test yourself? And that's what we wanted to really help with this video. So how do we do the test? Well, we went to the Foresight Sports headquarters in Guildford, where I hit a whole host of shots using the GC Quad Launch Monitor and Pro V1 X golf balls. I started out for about 45 minutes hitting a few shots with each of the drivers just to make any tweaks that I needed to the setup to get them performing exactly right for me, so that they were all sort of ideally fitted for me, for my game. And then once I'd done that process, I hit 5 shots with each drivers and recorded the numbers. Now, I did take out some shots. Anything that was missing the target by more than 25 yards was deleted, and also anything that was really badly struck was deleted. Now, I appreciate there is something to be said for how the driver performs on really poor strikes, but in this instance, it was just skewing the numbers too much. If I hit 5 really nicely struck shots with one driver and then a couple poor hits with another driver, it was skewing the numbers in a way that looked a little bit unfair. So we took out anything that was really poorly struck. Otherwise, everything else stayed in there. In terms of the results, we split the results up into 6 different categories: looks, feel, flight, distance, forgiveness and price, just so that we could see which ones perform best in each of those really important categories. Right, let's have a look at the results, starting with the looks. Okay, so in terms of the looks, for me, there were 2 outstanding candidates. But before I get onto that, just a quick word that across the board, all of the drivers, I think, have a really simple and classic profile. There's not really too much to choose from when they're down behind the ball. They combine a really nice feel of power and forgiveness, and I think whichever brand you go for, you'll notice that. Having said that, my 2 favourites in the looks department were the TaylorMade and the Callaway. Both of these drivers combine that really simple classic profile with quite a modern and techie look, one that I really like. In fact, I think at the start of 2018, TaylorMade really upped their game with the M3 and the M4. I think the shelf appeal of this driver is absolutely superb, and that's why if I was picking between them, I'd probably lean towards the TaylorMade M3. Just a quick word on where everything else sits within the look stakes. Both the Srixon and the Titleist have a very simple and understated look. There's not too much going on. If you're looking for something really unfussy and that's just very simple, very unstated, very classic, the Titleist TS3 and TS2 drivers are certainly a good option. Srixon, I would say, falls into a similar category. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you have the Ping and the Cobra. Both of these drivers have a little bit more going on at address. You have the Dragonfly technology and the turbulators in the Ping, and Cobra has the carbon composite crown plus the grey finish. For me, these 2 drivers were a little bit more fussy, and that's why I probably like these 2 the least of the 6 that I tested. But as I said at the beginning, in terms of looks behind the ball, I think they're all pretty good. If I had to pick one in terms of its looks, it would be the TaylorMade M3. Okay, so the differences in feel between these 6 drivers is quite subtle, but when you hit one after another, you can notice them, you can pick up on them. As I've got them set down in front of me, the TaylorMade, the Callaway and the Cobra all have a very similar feel. They're all carbon composite crowns, and yet clearly all 3 brands have worked hard to make sure that these sound powerful through the hitting area. I love the sort of dull, powerful strike through impact that you get with these sorts of drivers, so I thought they feel really good. For me, the surprise package of the 6 that I tested was really the Titleist TS3. Now, I've played Titleist drivers pretty much all the way through my life, and I've loved that dull, what I feel is a powerful impact sound. The TS3 is slightly higher pitched than I've been used to with previous Titleist drivers, the 917, the 915. It's definitely noticeable. It's really noticeable to me. I didn't quite like it as much, but it wouldn't put me off using it, that's for sure. The 2 highest pitched drivers were the Ping G400 Max. The highest pitched of the 6 was the Srixon Z785. This has the carbon composite crown of the others on the test, but Srixon have clearly worked to make this sound a little bit different to the Callaway, the TaylorMade and the Cobra. It's very noticeable, certainly through the ball. If you like a higher pitched sound through impact, for me it doesn't feel quite so powerful, but I know that for other players they really like that. If that's something that really speaks to you, I would suggest you test out the Srixon Z785. Okay, so onto the ball flight, and here is where we see the first set of data from the launch monitor. Now, in order to make it as readable and understandable as possible, we've taken the averages for each of those drivers and put them all into one table. We've used the launch angle, the spin, and the peak height to give you a real sense for how each of these drivers was flying for me during the test. Okay, so some of the key numbers that stood out to me. So the Titleist was the lowest launching at 13.8. The Callaway was the highest launching at 15.4. The TaylorMade was the lowest spinning, 18.15, versus the highest spinning, which was the Cobra at 2.305. Now, for me, the Cobra was flying probably a little bit too high at 45 peak height, and the TaylorMade a little bit too low at 35 peak height. I'd be looking for something somewhere in between those numbers. A quick word on how the TaylorMade driver was spinning. So spinning at 18.15, and I had the spin profile set in a kind of a mid-spin setting. I'd be tempted, if this was my driver, if I was fitting it for myself, to move that spin weight further back in the head to get that spin number up a little bit to make it slightly more forgiving out on the golf course. But in the launch monitor environment, this was the one that seemed to work best for me in terms of the overall numbers. Of the 6 drivers, the one I liked the best in terms of the flight that it was offering was probably the Ping G400 Max. So launching at 15.2, spinning at just about 2,000 RPM with a peak height of 40, I thought that it was a really powerful ball flight. So getting up into the air nice and quickly and then just staying there. It felt like it was going to stay in the air for a very, very long time. So in terms of ball flight, for me, the one I'd pick would be the Ping G400 Max. Okay, so on to distance, and for me this was probably the most interesting category because there was a couple of real surprise packages. A quick look at the numbers illustrates that the two longest drivers I hit were the Ping G400 Max and the Titleist TS3. Now, if I was doing this test this time last year, in fact I did do this test this time last year, those two drivers definitely were not the two longest that I hit. But Ping and Titleist have really clearly worked on that element, and both the ball speed of the Titleist TS3 was up at 165, which was absolutely fantastic, delivering a carry distance for me of 292, which is quite significantly up on where I would have been with the previous generation 917. It was a similar story with the Ping, so ball speed of 162, again, exactly the same carry distance of 292. A couple of other points to make about distance. So each of these drivers is long. They're all long. So 290 being my kind of average. I got that with the Cobra, with the Srixon and with the TaylorMade. The only driver that dipped below the 290 mark was the Callaway Rogue Sub Zero. And I want to just dive into the numbers to take a closer look why. I'm going to flash up the club head data for the Callaway Rogue Sub Zero. In particular, I'm going to show you a shot that I hit that came quite a long way out of the neck. That's the red blob that you're looking at there, quite a long way, as I say, out of the heel. And then if you look at the exact launch monitor data that I was able to get with the Rogue driver, you'll notice that was shot number 23. Ball speed of 161, spinning at 1999, so spinning at 2000. And that shot that came right out of the heel carried an absolutely whopping 294, which would suggest that the Callaway has got a very good MOI and that it really does forgive miss hits. That's comfortably the biggest miss hit that was left in this test in terms of the numbers. However, the flip side, for some reason, shot number 25, ball speed of 160, so 1 mile an hour less ball speed, not a huge amount of difference. It did spin a little bit more at 2537, but it only carried 279. Now, I have no idea why that shot didn't quite go as far as some of the others in the test. All I can say is that the Callaway Rogue driver that I was using is the one that has been used the most during the course of the last 9 months or so. So perhaps there's something in that. It did fly a little bit high higher, and it certainly didn't go quite so far, and that brought down the Callaway numbers just a little bit. I'd say overall, in terms of distance, there really isn't much to choose between them. However, if in the past you've veered away from Titleist or Ping because you thought they're not quite as long as Callaway or TaylorMade, you needn't worry about that anymore. This test confirms that both of those brands really have done some great work in increasing the speed of their club heads, increasing the distance, and the numbers are there for you to see. Okay, so in terms of forgiveness, what we're looking at here is the difference between the best hit and the worst hit, the difference between the longest and the shortest with each of the drivers. I'm going to flash up the club head data for each of the brands, and you'll notice I hit shots right out the middle with each club and some shots that were slightly out of the heel and toe with each club. And naturally, that is going to deliver a difference in terms of overall distance. What you're looking for in terms of forgiveness is for that number to be as small as possible. So, the two drivers that performed the best were the Cobra and the Titleist. There was just 5 yards difference between my best and worst hit with both of those brands. Then Srixon came in, 12-yard difference between my best and worst hit. Then it was Ping, 15 yards difference, Callaway 16 yards difference, and TaylorMade 20 yards difference. So there you have it. There's actually quite a big difference there between the Titleist and the Cobra on one end and the TaylorMade at the other end. And with the TaylorMade driver, as I said before, I would be tempted to move this central weight further back in the head. That would increase the spin a little bit, give me more flight, but also make it a more forgiving driver. The longest hit probably wouldn't be quite so long, but the shortest hit probably wouldn't be quite so short. So I would probably end up with a driver that would be more usable for me out on the golf course. And actually, there is an important point there for anyone thinking about going for a custom fitting. Don't get too suckered into thinking about your very longest hit. What you want to make sure is that your average hit is consistent, because that's what's going to make a really good and big difference to you out on the golf course. Okay, so on to value, and again, there are some big differences here. The Titleist TS3 comes in at $499, the TaylorMade then comes in at $479, Callaway $469, then you have Ping at $389, Srixon at $349, and Cobra down at $329. So there is a big difference actually between the Titleist at one end and the Cobra at the other. £170 difference between these two. And if I flash up the overall numbers I was able to achieve with this Cobra driver, you'll see it performed really well. It performed and it felt like a premium driver. Now, of course, everyone out there will have their own budget they're looking to hit. What's good to know is that there's something out there at different price points for everybody. Right, so on to the final verdict, and before I get to the driver that I would ultimately pick as my winner from the 6 that I tested, just a quick word on some of the key findings for me. And they were that, look at how similar the numbers are across the board. I'm going to flash up the table as a whole, and you'll notice that there really isn't much to choose from between any of these drivers. What we've been doing really is nitpicking the differences between them, and that's all because I went through the process and dialed them in exactly right for my game. As we always say, it underlines the importance of going through a full and thorough custom fitting with somebody who really knows what they're doing. That's how you're going to unlock the sort of levels of performance that will make a difference to your game. The other thing to point out is the setup between each of these drivers that I ultimately went for was quite different. I'm going to flash up exactly how each of these drivers was set up, and it was different across the board. And it's a point worth making that just because you've been a Titleist driver user in the past, you've had a 9.5 degree head and a certain shaft, doesn't mean that exact setup will be right for you again. Your setup will probably be different with each driver that you test out, and that's fine, but it just, again, it underlines the importance of custom fitting. So if I was picking one of these drivers to put in my bag, it would be the Ping G400 Max. Now, this was the second time I tested this driver this year, and I was shocked at how good it was the first time, and it delivered in exactly the same way the second time. Hit after hit after hit. This is a fantastic driver. It just delivers high launch, low spin. The ball just seems to stay in the air for an age, and it's also, to me, it felt really forgiving. It felt very, very consistent indeed, and that was the thing that I think struck me. If you look at the numbers here, I'm not sure I had to delete a single drive that I hit with this Ping driver. I hit 5 straight off the bat that went straight down the middle of the fairway, and they were all very, very long indeed. So there you have it, guys. Please do leave comments below. Tell us what you think of the test. Please also let us know if there are any drivers out there on the market that you want us to include in any more comparative tests in the future. We'd be really keen to know your thoughts. But for now, from the London Club, it's goodbye.